welcome to everyone. It's a great pleasure to have you all join us here today. I've been asked to begin this very special event today to reflect upon the importance of sharing spiritualism all over our world. And it's appropriate that we consider this because that must be one of the main aims and objectives that SNUi has brought into a reality in the last 11 years that it's been going. Without doubt, it's been said 1,000 times, if not more, we live at the moment in challenging and unprecedented times. And because of the virus we know as COVID-19, the world has become strangely united as one. The traditional man-made barriers that we create in our world have no effect, and this virus is traveling around the world. We know and have sent thoughts and healing to the many who have lost loved ones, and the particular sad part of losing someone and not having the chance to hold their hand as they pass to spirit or to say their goodbyes. But I'd like to begin by looking back. I'm a great advocate that our history informs where we are now and will guide us forward into the future. And I'd like to mention potentially one of our really great pioneers. And the gentleman I would like to allude to is no other than Arthur Finlay. And I know that many of you will have a great soft spot for Arthur Finlay as a result perhaps of visiting the college at Stansted Hall. Arthur was without doubt a very intelligent man, and he recognized the need to be able to share the message of spirit and spiritualism around the world. He did this in many, many ways. He published no less than 10 books on the subject, and he ensured that those books were translated into many different languages so they could reach as wide an audience as possible, sharing his ideas, his thoughts, his theories of the potential that spiritualism had for the world. Today, our channels of communication are many. And again, these channels that are open to us all provide great possibilities. In a few moments, in a few seconds, our image, our voice, our thoughts, our ideas can travel around the globe literally in nanoseconds. We know that the spirit world were instrumental in bringing forward spiritualism at a time when the world was facing great change. And in the intervening 172 years since the phenomena in Hydesville, that message from spirit has been constant and has served in its own way to shape humanity's journey, helping us to realize our own innate possibilities and spiritual potential. I'm going to suggest to you that once again, humanity is drawing close to a crossroad. The future, as ever, is very much ours to shape. The importance of ordering our own lives, our needs, our relationships, our emotions, I know is something that has been on the minds of many of us while we've taken this opportunity to just have a little bit of time where we are still and not traveling around the world. But we can never lose sight of the input that the spirit world has to support us in that journey. I spoke at the beginning of the virus being no respecter of barriers or borders in our world. The message of spirit is exactly the same. And from those beginnings in 1848, that message very quickly, in an age so very much different to our own, spread like wildfire into Europe and literally around the world. So why was that so? It was so because the universal message of spirit is relevant not only to us as spiritualists, but also to every single human soul. And if we reflect upon that and the importance that that guidance and that help and that support can bring to us in changing our life and our experience in this world, maybe then we begin to understand the strength of the message that is there for each and every one of us. According to the button at the bottom of my screen, we have 101 people in this room. And many of us, if not all of us, are spiritualists. We have that great yearning to share that message of spirit in any way that we possibly can. We are called, taking account of our respective gifts, abilities, and knowledge as communicators, the mouthpiece of the spirit world, to bring forth the evidence of eternal life, but so much more as well. To bring forth the wisdom that should instill in the minds of all humanity a greater awareness that the time that we spend in this world is but a short part of a greater whole. We are no better or no greater than anyone else, but we each have that potential to be able to give and to be able to help. SNUi, over the past few weeks, has blossomed. And it's been a great pleasure to be part of that process and meeting people whose names I may well have seen, but never actually met the person. As we've worked together as one unified force to create a community, to uphold each and every one of us, to support us all in our moments of joy, but also in our moments of despondency. And touched and inspired by the message of spirit, we now are the pioneers who will shape the future. I urge you not to step back by that prospect, but rather to step forward, to be prepared to stand proud as spiritualists and share a message that is needed now, perhaps more than ever in our world. SNUi, I hope and trust and know, will be at the forefront of our actions to reach out around the world, to transcend the barriers and to bring unity and purpose and truth into our lives and into our world. I wish you well on your journey and urge you ever to find that presence within that unites us with bonds that can never be destroyed, bonds that will support us into our future. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And it's a pleasure to hear you once again. I've listened to David for many, many years now, and it always gives us an inspiring presentation. David, Minister David Bruton, President of the SNU. And I want to invite Minister Stephen Upton to the microphone or to the floor, who will talk to us on the topic of the past and the present. A little bit of background. Stephen was certainly here at the very beginning of the SNUi and is one of the authorities on its history. So, Stephen, please come forward and share with us the history of the SNUi.
Thank you, Arthur. Good afternoon, good evening, good day to everyone, wherever you are. A statement I've often made in my teachings is that the spirit world, or the intelligence that controls the communion between our world and the next, maybe controls isn't the right word, but evolves it, develops it. Mediumship develops to meet the needs of the day that we live in. That is why the mediumship of 1848 is very, very different than the mediumship of 2020. It evolves, and if you track back and trace the history, you can see how it evolved from those early stages of very crude physical phenomena, evolving into the mental mediumship. And by the time that we reached the First World War, where mass communication was needed because of the amount of souls transitioning at that time, and in such tragic circumstances, creating a need for mass communication on a scale that could never be met in the seance room. And keeping that in mind now, as I talk to you about the history of SNUi, I think we can draw the parallel to say that, and draw the conclusion that SNUi came and it has evolved at a time it was needed and come into its own today to meet the needs of today during this coronavirus situation. But our SNUi story has to go back first to 2008. And at the July annual general meeting in 2008, Vi Kipling made a speech talking about how she was already teaching on the internet and also demanding to know why, as often Vi did at the NEC, demanding to know what the NEC was going to do about it. Why wasn't the SNU on the internet? And as a very loyal SNU member, she wanted to teach through the internet, but through the SNU. And she couldn't do it. We had no presence. And the first NEC meeting after that AGM, which is only 2 weeks later, the NEC made the decision that we should have an internet presence. And I was given the job of putting that into action. So that's August 2008, the decision's made. I then started investigating, making decisions on what we needed, what we could do with the available technology of the time. A website development company was chosen, and we set a target date of the 1st of January 2009 as the launch date. But other decisions had to be made. For example, how would it fit in with our constitution? Because if you wanted to be a member of the SNU or a member of an SNU church, you had to be a spiritualist. You had to accept the 7 principles as the basis of your philosophy. But how would we control that or monitor that on the internet? A fundamental decision was made that firstly, SNUi would become a branch of the SNU in equal status with the Lyceum Union, and as a consequence could generate its own membership. And then the second fundamental decision, you didn't have to be a spiritualist to join. And that was a big departure from previous convention, because the thinking behind that decision was, how do you know if you want to be a spiritualist if you know nothing about it? How can you therefore come to this branch, make the decision in advance that you would be a spiritualist, and then learn about it? Surely that was putting the cart before the horse. So we made the decision then, a fundamental one, anyone could join and gather information about spiritualism to make an informed decision as to whether they'd want to become a spiritualist or not. We missed the date of the 1st of January by 1 week, and SNUi went live on the 7th of January 2009. So that's just over 11 years ago. In those early days, the way we conducted classes is a far cry from what we're doing today. This is almost like our own TV show. I changed the word show to a TV channel. But in those days, the way we communicated was by typing. All the classes, all the lectures was done by typing. I can't tell you how tedious that was looking back on it. Imagine doing an hour-long lecture by typing it in sentences, then posting it on. Questions came by typing, answers by typing, but we managed. And within a matter of weeks, membership exceeded 200. But very quickly, over the next year or two, technology started catching up. And we then brought in a company called Mega Meeting. And we then added to our platform live audio. The difference that made to our ability to reach out to the world was astonishing. No longer did we sit there typing and people reading. We could talk to people. They could talk back. We now had, in effect, our own live radio channel. And for many years, SNUi was conducted through that media. But like all things, not only does the technology evolve, but I'm absolutely certain that mediumship also evolves to meet the needs of the day we're living in and operating in. And eventually, only just over a year or so back, we started experimenting with this platform, Zoom. And last year, we fully committed to it and left behind Mega Meeting. And the difference this has made has been astonishing. So I wonder now, a year later, after Zoom becomes established, we all get used to it, we have a worldwide crisis. And for the first time in our entire history, we find all of our churches closed. Is that a coincidence? Or is it that intelligence out there that evolves and determines the types of mediumship, helps us develop and evolve new technologies? There's a coming together. There's some kind of perfect symmetry into it. If it is not determined by something greater intelligence, this is one amazing coincidence, because the need of today is being met by SNUi. Normally in many of our services prior to the crisis, well, certainly our maximum we could have in a class was 100. And on one occasion, a couple of years ago, we broadcast a live trance control demonstration with Judith Seaman as the medium, and we hit 98, starting to get panic a bit that evening, thinking, what happens if we hit the 100? But we hit 98. Now then, as this crisis came on, we changed our contract, and we can now have up to 300 people in directly. And we can also link it into live streaming through YouTube. And on a demonstration by Judith again recently, only a couple of weeks ago, we hit the 300 in Zoom, and we had another 285 through YouTube live. 585 people in one demonstration. Our Sunday Divine Service is regularly attracting now 250. The last time I was in a church service where there was in excess of 250 people was actually in America at Lilydale on a Sunday morning, and they had over 200 people present. When's the last time you can remember 585 people in an SNU event in any of our churches? What? Never. So Zoom has certainly come of age for us at the right time. What about the future? Where are we going with it? We're in the process of developing a new website. The beta version of it was viewed last week by myself and our communications director, Alv, and our head office manager, and we're just putting the final touches, getting it fully working. And one of the main features that we're bringing back, for those of you who remember a previous version of the website, is our absent healing page. And I know many of you have missed that. That will be back again with a new website. As soon as we know it's fully working, and that won't be long now, we've made a few, we've asked for a few corrections from the developers. As soon as it's working, the decision is to go live with the new website. Membership. A normal average month, and the statistics show that in January, a January to February 30-day period, we averaged 30 new members in that period, a new member a day. However, since the lockdown, the first 30 days of the lockdown, since we've been broadcasting live what we call open access events, we had 94 new membership applications, a rise in membership application of 320%. SNUi is certainly coming into its own and certainly deserves of this new website. So I know that some of you have been trying to join over the last 3-4 weeks, and there's been difficulties. They're to do with the existing website. And rather than spend money on correcting them, we've been asking you to be patient. Once we know that the new website is fully working, and you can join us by simply clicking a couple of buttons, oh, and of course paying your subscription, then we'll go live with the new website. So that will be going live as soon as we can, as soon as it's possible, when everything's 100% working. If you're not a member yet, I'd actually ask you to have a look at it. And go to the page on the SNUi website and have a look at the program that's open to members only, not just to the open access. If you are a member of the SNU already, and I am, to join SNUi is £8 per year. This has got to be one of the best kept secrets, because £8 a year is astonishing. If you're not an IM, then you can join for £21 a year. Again, a bargain for what you can get. SNUi regularly puts on for its members, even in non-crisis times, 60 to 80 classes, demonstrations, lectures, services every month. What church does that? This one does. So SNUi going forward into the future. This crisis has forced us to reconsider some things. We've made the Sunday Divine Service what we call open access. That means non-members can go to it. And we've regularly been seeing attendances of about 250 people. And we're going to continue with the open access Sunday services. And also the special, what we call keynote lectures. We've been very fortunate in many of our college tutors have been putting on lectures, special lectures, and they will still be open access. But for the members only, remember there has to be some benefit of being a member. That's where we do the training. SNUi has, in conjunction with the SNU Awards Scheme, SNUi Awards. You can do your platform accreditation scheme online through SNUi. You can work towards certificates for speaking, demonstrating and private sittings. See SNUi awards. All done to similar standards to the normal SNU awards because they're organised and run through the normal Education and Exponents Committee. But these are some of the benefits of joining. And going forward, there's going to be more and more training through SNUi in conjunction with Education and Exponents. Only this last week, 3 evenings in a row, we had final assessment boards for people whose normal board was cancelled because our churches are closed. So we did them online. And there's going to be more and more of this. So no matter where you live in the world, this can be your spiritualist church. No excuses anymore that you don't live close enough to one. SNUi is very, very quickly developing into the online spiritualist community. You must be interested in us, else you wouldn't have taken your time and logged in on a Saturday evening. So my message to you is very simple. The intelligence behind the communion between our two worlds evolves mediumship to meet the needs of the day. I believe this is the future. And I believe forms of mediumship will continue to evolve to work through the internet, reaching around this globe, wherever anybody has electricity, a computer, internet access. Mediumship will evolve to meet their needs. Because the message of spiritualism is so simple. There is no death. But we can now reach out to wherever people are, even if they don't have a church nearby, a physical church, a bricks and mortar church. So if you haven't got one, because of course we want you to go back to our churches when the crisis is over, but if you haven't got a church nearby, this can be your church. But even if you have a church, why not also join us online and help us shape the future of our spiritualism's online community? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Minister Stephen Upton, Director for the SNU and the person particularly in charge of the Education and Exponents function. It's interesting that Zoom itself started about 11 years ago, so we're at equal sort of age, the Zoom facility and ourselves at SNUi. Is this coincidence? Who knows? But Stephen's alluded there to a great deal of information about the concept of education on SNUi. And our next speaker, Minister Judith Seaman, is in fact the chairman of our Education and Exponents Committee. And she will be talking to us about what is possible, how you can actually extend yourself with the facilities of the SNUi. So I now want to invite Minister Judith Seaman to pick up the microphone, and I will unmute her so she can speak freely. Judith, the platform's yours.
Thank you, Arthur. Good evening, everyone. Stephen's already mentioned quite a lot about how the Education and Exponents Committee are working very closely hand in hand with SNUi. And over the last 18 months, we've now changed a great deal of facilities for training within the spiritualist realms of work. In particular, the training for becoming a registered approved healer. We now have the facilities for healers to train through the online, through SNUi, through the online facility, to do all their work and training to be able to become a registered approved healer, except for the very final step, which is the assessment board, which ascertains to make them, to give them that accreditation. So all of the previous necessity for there to be attendance at a church or a centre or training now we can extend beyond that, and people all around the world, and indeed that is happening, are now undertaking training to learn and be involved in one of, if not the most important aspect of mediumship for me, which is healing mediumship. If we look at the potential for helping people, yes, we can see that to deliver some evidence of the survival of the soul after death is beautiful, it's wonderful. But to be able to help a soul that is suffering to find relief mentally, emotionally, physically, through the magnificent power of healing energy is really important, particularly if that person has been told by the medical profession, well, we can't do this, we can't do that. We can allow that universal energy that we call the God force to do that work to help people. And so that is ongoing now. The new scheme that has been set up is working well. And unfortunately, of course, during this period where we can't socialize together, some of those final assessment upgrades have had to be waiting now, but we're making efforts on Zoom to do part of those upgrades so that when the time comes, we can finish them off more quickly when we're allowed to mix with each other again. Also, approximately 2 years ago, coming up for 3 years, the Education and Exponents Committee were brought together and created Education and Exponents Committee. This has made a huge progress within the experience of the SNU, because now we are working together with the written and academic training as well as the practical training. And a lot of this is being done on SNUi. For the first time ever, we have been running, and it is coming to its climax, a teacher training scheme on SNUi, so that people can learn how to teach to the best advantage on the online platform, which is very different to teaching in the real world. And we have had our first successful candidate who has achieved their CSNU as an online teacher just recently. So again, this is a new area which we've opened up on SNUi. It's been my privilege to work with this experimental scheme. We really didn't quite know exactly how it would work, but together, myself and those involved have really worked and found the way forward. And so now the future to be able to do teacher training on the SNUi platform is now available going forward, thus offering that facility, whereas previously people had to travel to the United Kingdom to do that teacher training practice. We've also in recent times been able to do final assessment boards, which are the assessment criteria for being able to award people their certificate of recognition or a platform accreditation scheme, diplomas, whatever. We have been doing those recently this week on the Zoom platform, because many people were waiting for boards and they couldn't happen because we are not social gathering together. So this week we set about changing that, and successfully this week several people have passed their awards. I must admit, the first time I demonstrated online, I really wasn't quite sure how it would feel, and a colleague of mine who's already spoken to you, we shared that first experience together. We've worked together a lot, Minister David Bruton and I, and we both were taking our first step into that. But you know, because the spirit is not a physical manifestation, it isn't affected by the non-presence of the recipient or the communicator. The energy, the thought form the emotion of that connection still is as powerful, and in my opinion, more powerful. From my experiences since I began working in that way, it's almost like we are not distracted by having a whole load of faces in front of us like you have in a church, when they're almost kind of there hoping the message will be for me. We just don't have that. So our focus is with the communicator, totally 100%. Make that link, allow them to bring forward their evidence, and amazingly enough, it finds the absolutely right person for that message. Because there is no psychic connection with the recipient, it's pure spiritual communication from someone in the spirit world who wants to reach out to their loved one. And right now, there are many of those who are wanting to do that. And SNUi is offering that platform to those who are willing to be that receiver of that communication and allow that evidence, that love. And you can actually feel the emotion flowing between the communicator and the recipient, because emotion is not physical. Mental communication, thoughts are not physical. They flow. Doesn't matter how far, we can send a thought and we can receive it. And SNUi, for me, is offering this amazing facility for people to be able to communicate from the spirit world to anywhere and to anyone in our world, to bring that evidential information that shows that they are alive, that they can communicate, that they are continuing their life journey, but just in another dimension of life. This is just some of the things that over the past 2 or 3 months I have been experiencing myself, and absolutely enjoying the work, working through the Zoom faculty, working with the teaching, being able to provide for people to take their awards, but most of all, being able to provide that communication between the spirit world and the earth world, if you want to call it that, because there are no barriers in that energy of the spirit of the soul that stops it from communicating. And if we can work together as spiritualists, we can make a difference to people all over the world by allowing them to receive and make a judgment for themselves. Does that indeed prove to them that life is eternal?
Thank you, Minister Judith Seaman, Chairman of the Exponents and Education Committee. In the last few minutes, we've heard of our philosophy, we've heard of our history, we've heard of our education. The next speaker is going to bring out the crystal ball and look to our future. Can I welcome to the platform Alf Hirst, who is the Communications Director of the SNU. Alf.
Thank you, Arthur. Hello to everyone, wherever you are and whatever time it is. I'm glad you could be here with us all today. At the start of our time together, Minister David Bruton talked about our pioneers. And I think when we look towards the future with SNUi, we have to consider ourselves as pioneers. When we think about our pioneers back in history, they really seized the day in terms of technology. They were very keen to use new forms of technology, so the printing press and the ability to publish things very quickly and much more cheaply than in the past was seized by them. And if we think back to the texts which were called the seed corn texts, they were cheaply produced flyers, perhaps as we might recognize them today, that contained spiritualist writings and philosophy on them. They were bought very cheaply and allowed the word of spiritualism to be distributed quickly, easily, economically. And perhaps that's where we're at today. I do know that if the pioneers that we read about in our history books and who we know helped to build our movement, if they were here today, they would be embracing this kind of technology. And another aspect from our pioneers' history, which I think we are replicating today, and we must be conscious of and ensure that we keep doing that, is the democratization of spirituality. What do I mean by that? When modern spiritualism came into being, religion was perhaps controlled by the wealthy and those in power, and its adherents just had to simply follow that and didn't have much choice. Spiritualism turned that on its head, and ordinary people suddenly became the exponents of the religion. It changed the lives of different classes of people at the time. In particular, it changed the lives of women who perhaps previously had been marginalized within religion, but suddenly were the key exponents and were actually spiritual leaders. We only have to look at Emma Hardinge Britten to see the impact that she made then and now, because that impact lasts until today. So SNUi brings with it that democracy, because it puts spiritualism on the screen of anybody. Anybody, as Minister Stephen Upton said, who has got access to a computer and the internet, then they have access to spiritualism. For me, that is a real form of democracy. And that's something that we must hold on to and take forward. Because if we do that, then we start to treasure, I think is a good word, to treasure diversity, because it allows all different kinds of people to experience what spiritualism is and what spiritualism has to offer. Technology was perhaps important in another way to our pioneers, because it perhaps helped them to understand how the spirit world communicated. We had all those many decades ago, the telegraph and the telephone coming into existence, and that long cable that was stretched between the UK and the States. And perhaps people started to think about this, the spirit world like that, and communication like that, that spiritualism provided a link between the two worlds. Well, here we are today using technology, not only to enhance that link between our world and the spirit world, but to enhance the link between us here around the world. We are, after all, spirit here and now. And I say these things because it's important to think about those fundamental ideas that strengthen what SNUi is. So if we're looking to the future with SNUi, we have to think about how we spread the word, how we talk to people about SNUi. SNUi is not an alternative to bricks and mortar churches. We have to be clear to tell people that. It's not an alternative because it is a phenomenon in itself. It has embraced this audio-visual internet technology and is using it to the full. We're able to see each other, hear each other, and interact with each other. It's not the second best, it's a thing in itself. And so we must promote the advantage of this to people. In many ways, what's happening in the world now with the lockdown pretty much around this planet, SNUi is really saying the future is now. When we don't have all of those things that we take for granted, we're able to value SNUi in a new way. And I think that is incredibly exciting for people, because at a time when we've been isolated and we've had so many avenues of communication removed from us, this form of communication has opened up, and we've been using it in huge numbers to create and strengthen this community of spiritualists and people who are perhaps approaching spiritualism to find out what it's about. A couple of weeks ago in a healing service, I shared some words that were written in the 70s by that renowned healer Harry Edwards, and he was talking about absent healing and how sometimes then absent healing was seen as secondary to contact healing, when the healing medium is able to be there and place their hands on their patient. Well, SNUi has demonstrated in such a powerful way that this way of enacting and activating spiritualism is just as powerful, because people have been able to very generously give their healing to other people and have been able to benefit absently from that healing. And so that has really served to demonstrate where SNUi is going. It's moving beyond what we're used to, and it's moving for so many people into a new and exciting territory. For some people, SNUi will be a necessity, and going forwards, we need to reach out to people who don't have a bricks and mortar church near them. In fact, they may live in a country where spiritualism is very rare. But we know that spiritualism is something that starts within. For most people, spiritualism isn't something that they're indoctrinated into. It's not something that is a tradition within their family. It's a spark of curiosity, a spark of the spirit within that leads people towards this light that we know as spiritualism. And if there isn't a church in their town or their county or area where they live, or even their country, then SNUi means that they are not excluded. So we need to promote how inclusive SNUi is. And I'm telling you these things because I know all of you out there who are enthusiastic about spiritualism, enthusiastic about the things that you do on SNUi, will want to have these conversations, and it's useful to think about these things, to talk to people about in those conversations. It's also convenient as well. We can just simply turn on our computer and most likely there will be something happening on SNUi. The future of SNUi means that we are producing more rounded exponents of our religion, because it means that our exponents have access to all the different practices within spiritualism. They're not dependent on their church and the strength of the circle leaders within their church, because they have a whole diverse range of tutors who are able to come online, share their experience, share their knowledge, and allow you to participate in workshops and lectures and discussions. And so these are the things that will continue to grow and grow and grow as we move into the future. I want to come back to that idea that SNUi isn't an alternative. I said that it's a thing in itself. And the intrinsic strength of SNUi is that it actually, I believe, has the potential to deepen the experience of our training, deepen the experience of our worship. Some people might say, well, I feel so remote from everyone because they're at the other end of a wire on the internet somewhere. But actually, as Minister Judith Seaman said, the power of the Spirit is not physical. It has overcome all of that. And so when we practice our mediumship, we know that we're not taking our cues from the recipient, because very likely they're just going to be a small little box on the screen, or perhaps just a name. And that doesn't matter. And surely that is going to deepen the experience for both the exponent and the recipient of that work. It's interactive as well. And more in this world, we demand that. We demand to have a say. We demand to have our voice heard. We demand to respond to something. And again, this is part of the democracy that SNUi is able to cultivate. It's saying that you, as a recipient of SNUi services, is so important, is at the center of what it does, because your voice matters, and it matters because it has the capacity and the opportunity to be heard. And this will become more and more important. And in the future, through SNUi, I believe that our exponents will become more articulate and more able to discuss in greater depth what spiritualism is and what spiritualism can be. And so, in enhancing all aspects of spiritualism, SNUi has a great future. But I go back to what I said at the beginning. We are the pioneers. You can't leave it to me as a communications director and my team in the Publicity and Promotions Committee to get that word out to every corner of the globe. We have limited time and resources. But all of you here has a network of people. And if you can talk to at least some of that network of people, talk about some of the things that I've highlighted, some of the fundamental qualities of SNUi that give it its strength, that give it its personality, that give it and you that power of spirit, then those conversations have that power to go out like the ripples in a pond and to bring new people into spiritualism. And so really, the future of spiritualism is you, because that's the democracy that SNUi promotes. SNUi isn't about SNUi. SNUi is about you. And so there is your role within SNUi. Your role is its future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Al, Director of Communications for SNU. It's fascinating that we've talked about covering distances. Perhaps this is a moment to remind people that we've got well over 1,200 members at the moment, and they're distributed over 43 countries. Now, if I was to try and list 43 countries on a piece of paper just now, I think I would have great difficulty. But I know obviously we have a great deal of attendance from UK and Europe and the USA. They're the easy ones. But we also have members in Iceland. We also have members in the Middle East. I think we have one in Japan, Argentina, and down into Australasia. We are covering a vast, well, we are covering the globe, and that is our responsibility to make it work for all those people, however distant, however isolated they may feel. We are there. Thank you to our speakers, and in a moment I'm going to play a little bit of music to allow our visiting medium, Jackie Wright, Minister Jackie Wright, Vice President of the Union, to join us. But let's just enjoy a little bit more of Celine Dion while Jackie prepares for the demonstration of mediumship. Now, may I ask Minister Jackie Wright, Vice President of the Union, to join us and offer a demonstration of mediumship.
Good evening, Arthur.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
That's good. Good sound.
I have no idea how to get my full screen on like the guys and Judith all did, but I'm sure you don't really want to see me anyway. So let's just crack on with it, shall we? So ladies and gentlemen, wherever the world you may be, you're very welcome. And it's wonderful to share a little bit of time with you all. I very much here have, while that song was being played, a lady who was telling me she is mother. I know as Mum is talking to me here, she's a deeply religious lady. I know this church is very important in her life and it is the focus of her life. But I also know that Mum has passed within a hospital or a care facility. And I very much know that there is a need to give her attention towards the end of her days. I know that this lady is talking to me about loving her family, but respectfully loving her church more. So please don't be offended by that. I'm just trying to get across her deeply religious views. She's very much of the Catholic faith or the Christian faith. Can anybody understand what I've said thus far?
If you understand what Jack is saying, please use the raise hand. That's a great advantage to bring your name to the top of our list. The raise hand is in the bottom right-hand corner of the Pine Participants panel. No blue hands at the moment, Jackie.
Good, so we'll keep talking. I know with this lady there's a
Jackie, Arthur, I can see 3 blue hands.
Oh, good. Okay.
Oh, that's good news.
Okay, that's good news. That's good. So let's just keep talking so we can get it down to 1. Could we just remind them that they need to know all the evidence, not just snippets of it? It's important that they can take everything. And I know with this lady, as we talk to her, there's got to also, this is a common name, forgive me, but there's got to be a connection to the name of Margaret too. I'm not saying it's Mum's name, but I know there is a connection to the name of Margaret.
We have 2 people.
Okie dokie. Mum is trying to tell me here that she was from a large family herself, but I also know that she, it's almost as though she couldn't, she lost touch with them or she moved away from them or whatever. I'm just not close to my family as I get into my later life, but my church remains my family.
Write you down to 1 person, Anne-Marie.
Can we talk to Anne-Marie if that's okay?
That's all right.
So Anne-Marie, you understand what I'm saying to you?
Absolutely. All of it.
Fabulous.
All of it.
And but you'd understand, please don't think I'm painting a bad picture of your mum.
Oh, no.
She does have a huge heart, this lady.
Absolutely.
But I absolutely know that her church is her passion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And her faith is unstinting.
Yes.
But can I also ask you, Anne-Marie, would there be a connection to anything that sounds like Newtown or Newton? actually think it's Newtown. Tell me no.
Yeah, I can say no.
Great,
no,
wonderful. Let me tell you why you're wrong. Because, and I mean that in fun, honestly, because as I hear us talking of Newtown, I want to say it in a couple of ways. First of all, I want to talk about a memory Mum has of moving to a new town, somewhere where she had to either start her life again or she had to integrate within the community.
That would be me. She never moved from the house.
Oh, so that's with you. Then forgive me. That is my fault. But I do want to stick with Mum because I know that there is something to do with a place called Newtown. And I know I can hear that very, very audibly with her because she's using the word in both ways. I know wherever this place is Newtown, I have family that live there or family that moved there. Because I know it's I can see Mum writing on an envelope and that being put on the address.
Not making it fit. There's Luton.
No, I want Newtown.
Okay,
sorry,
I'm really
me.
sorry. It's not ringing any bells.
Okay, well, I want to stay with it just for a second because it's important. But I know as I'm writing to what feels to me like either a brother or a sister and a brother-in-law, I know I'm writing to them by hand because I don't want to lose contact. For inevitably we do, or it becomes distant.
I understand that fully at the moment. Yeah.
Great. And I wanted to check that address because I know that it's important. But I have to say that your mum is saying here, she is proud of how you have had the courage and the confidence to move to a new town.
Yes.
To reinvent your life. Because it's took a lot of faith to do that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Now, can I just ask you, in your mum's living years, would you know if she ever received some kind of accolade or recognition from her church? There's something she's proud of. It's nothing to do with like an award as such, but there's something to do with like a certificate or, sorry, let me say that again. There is a letter she either received from the Pope or a letter she received from an important person within the church that recognized her dedication to the church. And I know that as I receive this letter, I'm full of pride. I really am. I'm full of pride. It would be a little bit like me getting a letter off David Bruton, which is not going to happen. But anyway, but it's like I get all this pride because I have been acknowledged for my dedication to the church. Because I need to say that your mum has really nothing else in her life. She has a church, she has her family. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense, but I'm the person who's got the recognition that she would be
I'm
proud.
coming to that. Stay with that. Stay with me. Please don't fill my mouth.
Oh, sorry.
I will repeat back to you that which you tell me. But I know that she is talking of receiving this letter. I have to keep with that because I know I can feel the pride.
Yeah.
But I also want to say to you that your mum is not a boastful lady. She is not a lady who would have boasted about.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
She would have been very humble and very,
absolutely.
As I feel that. Now, do you also understand the connection to Margaret?
Well, it was her name.
Yeah, because she keeps repeating.
And my sister's name, and it was her daughter's name.
Okay, she just keeps repeating Margaret,
yeah,
over and over again.
There's three.
But if I said to you, and I mean this in a very respectful way, out of the family, you are the one more like your mum. And by that, I mean you have your own dedication, you have your own commitment to what you believe in.
Absolutely.
And what she is saying, and I wish you hadn't told me because now this does make it sound like I'm making it fit. But your mum is, you see, I'm a big believer, Anne-Marie, the evidence the Spirit will give us forms the message they give you.
Absolutely.
And as she talks of new town, she talks of you having the courage to move to a new town.
Yeah.
As she talks of her receiving this recognition from her church and her faith, she is talking about the recognition you have recently received.
Yeah.
And I know that Mum is just painting this picture to you of her wanting you to know she is still watching over you.
Yeah.
She would never, I don't believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, she would never have looked at spiritualism or mediumship.
Absolutely not.
In this way. But she is saying, what I do know is that whatever my belief is, the strongest knowledge is that I love you.
Yeah.
And I try my best to be the mum now I couldn't be when I was alive.
Absolutely.
So she's doing her best, but she cannot make up for the past.
Absolutely.
Take her love, Anne-Marie, and thank you ever so much for being my first victim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I've got to move on very quickly because we don't have a great deal of time. Is that okay, Arthur?
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. No, I'm happy. Thank you.
Good. I need to talk very, very quickly about, we've got parents coming through. It's one of those nights. A gentleman who's telling me he is dad. I know he is passed with something like COPD or some illness that really affects the lungs, but I feel very much that this illness is work related. It is something he gets because of the job he does. I feel that at one time in his life, he has worked in buildings where there's been asbestos and things like this. I need to talk about him being a labourer, yes, but being good at being a labourer. I need to say that. There's got to be a connection to the name of Jim or Jimmy, because I'm hearing that too. How are we doing? Anybody's hand up, or have they all gone to make a cup of tea?
Should we show those blue hands, please? Yes, we got two. We got two people.
Great. Can I just ask with them two people, and I don't mean to say this in a bad way, but is one of them people actually British? Because I very much feel that this dad is a British man rather than a international man, if that makes sense.
You're down to one, Tracy.
Good. Could I speak with Tracy, if that's okay?
Go ahead, Tracy.
Hello.
Oops.
Hi, Tracy. You can understand what I've said to you, and this would be your dad.
My husband's father, who's British, yes.
Yeah, okay, that's good, because I don't get in-laws, mainly because mine don't like me very much, but moving on. Because I know I've got dad here, and I know he talks about his work. I've got to talk about how much he suffered at the end of his life. I really need to impress this problem with the lungs and not being able to draw breath.
Yes.
Make sense? But
yes.
Can I just say to you here, this is a man who is no fool. This is a man who can speak his mind, but he would never do it in a nasty way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? Now, if this is your father-in-law, there's got to be a truth where him and his son, or one of his sons, fell out in quite a major way.
Yes.
Because I know he is talking about dad, from dad's point of view, because he can only tell me his point of view. He is talking about himself being stubborn and not taking the time to listen to another point of view.
Yes.
And he's so heartily sorry for that lost time with his child. He really is. But I need to talk about his fight to stay alive, because he's telling me here that as the end of his days came, he started to become afraid, he was panicky, he wasn't sure what was going to happen to him.
Correct.
And what he seems to be telling me here, that it was the same son he fell out with who took the time to say to him, you know, Dad, everything's going to be fine.
Yes.
Yeah. And what he is saying is, I was so grateful for that at the end of my life. So grateful. But I just need to say to you, because I've got to be quick, because we've got to move on to questions and answers. But Tracy, can I just ask, is it correct that your husband is moving into a new phase of his job or a new field within work?
No.
Okay. Your father keeps saying to your husband or to the family, good luck with the changes that are happening within finance and work. And I need to say this to you because what your father-in-law is, he is excellent with money. He doesn't have a great deal of it, but he's excellent with managing it.
Yes.
A lot better than I am, I can tell you. But I know that what he is saying here is, you know, sometimes you've got to just invest a penny to make a pound. or in your case, $1. And I know what he is saying here is the changes that you have put into place will bear fruit, whatever that's about.
Actually, yes,
So,
I agree. Yes.
yeah, great, fabulous. So your dad, your father-in-law, he just wants you to know he is looking over you. He is taking care of you and the family. Do you understand the name of Jim or Jimmy?
My husband's a James, my dad's a Jim, and
Right.
his father's also a Jim.
That makes sense. That's good. Because I know I just keep hearing it. Please take your father-in-law's love. Please know that he's also saying where the family's concerned, you can't bring back the past. So let's now make changes to bring us together in a tighter, happier way.
Perfect, thank you.
Just before I leave you, Tracy, happy birthday, because he's telling me there's a birthday very, very soon.
Oh, thank you.
That makes sense?
Yes.
Great, fabulous, my darling. Thank you for talking with me.
Thank you, you're welcome.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye.
Are we back to you then, Arthur?
I think we are probably. We need 2 or 3 minutes for question time. Thank you very much, Jackie.
Thank you.
Just remind people, of course, that no distance is a problem. And also, one can't claim that Jackie was reading body language as Tracy hasn't got her camera on. So again, we're demonstrating once again the validity of spirit communication. The last item on the program for today is the possibility of question time. We have a very illustrious panel with us today from, let's consider, President of the Union, 2 Directors of the Union, a Vice President, and I was the Communication Director. So let's now take this opportunity to think of those questions which I'm sure you've been accumulating over the last hour and a quarter, and bring them forward. Again, if you'd like to place a question, raise your hand so that your name comes to the top of my list and I can see you and invite you forwards. Do we have any questions, please? Yes, I saw a blue hand there. Anne-Marie,
Okay.
coming in.
Thank you. I've actually got 3, but I'll just stick with 1 for now. Obviously, you're doing lots of lectures and talks on the SNUi. Are any of those going to be put into a library facility, or are they put into a library facility that you can go back and look at them, listen to them, and be educated by them?
Perhaps I can answer that question. We are currently building up a library of, particularly if you like, the keynote lectures, and a number of those are already available on the YouTube facility.
Thank you.
And are you a member, Anne-Marie?
Not of the SNUi.
Not of the SNUi. Okay. That's no problem, because the majority of the keynote lectures are still made available to the public. And I'm going to ask either Kathy or Angela if they can put the link to that website, that YouTube site or YouTube channel on the chat for me.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's my next question. Well, not the 1 and 2.
May I just add something, Arthur?
Certainly, Stephen.
Yeah, the SNU also has a YouTube channel, and there's a lot of archive footage on there. If you go to YouTube and just put in a search for SNU film, 2 words, or the acronym SNU, and then film, and you'll find the SNU YouTube channel.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephen. Any more comments from the panel? Okay. Anne-Marie, you still have your hand up. That's fine. You said you had 3 questions. Nobody else at the moment has put a hand up. Do you want to carry on with your second or third question?
If anybody doesn't mind. Alvin, you spoke, obviously everybody else did, about the international aspect of the SNUi. But obviously with everything that's going on, it's highlighted a lot of people in this country who are housebound, etc. Do you not think the word international loses the UK population that might be interested in SNUi?
It's something that we've been thinking about, Anne-Marie, because in reality, SNUi is for everybody, wherever you are on the planet.
Absolutely.
And I talked about that democracy as well. So it's not a matter of actuality or reality. It's a matter of perception. And so we need to change people's minds.
Yeah.
We've been using the hashtag recently, spiritualism online, because that says exactly what it is, spiritualism online. It's the same spiritualism that you get in a church in the UK or some of our churches around the world. But we want it to be available to anybody who wants it, anybody who has that spark of curiosity, anybody who is led towards spiritualism by the spirit world, by their own spirit indeed. And so it's about how we change perception.
Yeah, totally.
And in fact, there are many parts of the UK, and I've just been doing a mapping exercise to look at where our members are and where our churches are. So there are areas of the UK where there isn't a church. And so we want to reach out to those areas as well. So perhaps the international tag of SNUi, we need to ensure that people understand that means the whole planet.
Yeah, exactly.
The last two letters of SNUi are U and I, and that doesn't depend on geography.
Yeah.
It just depends on us, and that's it.
Yeah, so I understand obviously that's how it was set up, and now obviously the expansion that's taken place. So thank you.
Sure.
Arthur, may I come in and add to that?
Certainly. Yep.
Anne-Marie, it has already been decided to remove the word international.
Okay, right.
On Monday, there's a GPC meeting, because it's in bylaws is the problem. So we'll be looking at bylaws on Monday to be removing it, and in the next circulation, when we then issue amendments to bylaws, the word international will officially have been removed.
Okay, can I just ask?
Officially known as SNUi, but not the word in there.
Okay. Can I just have one question? Obviously, on the international accreditations that you do online, you put the I in. Why do you put the I in? Surely a CSNU is a CSNU, whether it's done online or offline.
It does differentiate, actually. There's a difference. Okay. That is in the final assessment board. The I, we're no longer going to use the word I, but we're keeping the letter in. It's like in iPhone, iPad. What does the I mean? I don't think anyone knows. But SNUi has become so established in the last 11 years. Everyone thinks of it as SNUi. No one ever thinks of it as SNU International.
Right. Okay.
The reason why we have PAS-I, CSNUi is because their assessment was done online. It's an SNUi award as opposed to a real world assessment.
Okay.
Somebody who does the CSNUi or PAS-I can upgrade them, that award or accreditation, to the real world one,
right. Okay.
Real world assessment. There are differences when it comes to assessing.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And we have Lynn-Marie waiting with a question. Lynn, do you want to come in if I unmute you? Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada, and I want to know, how do I actually send money and join the SNU? Is there an online site for me to enter my credit card or something like that?
Does any of the panel want to do it?
If you're on GPC, yes, go to the SNU website. Not only for people joining, but also we are a charity as well, and you can even make donations. snu.org.uk. snu.org.uk. And you can go to that website. And if you tick a few boxes accepting things like you accept the 7 principles, the basis of your religious philosophy, you can become a member or more or less immediately.
Yeah,
thank you.
Stephen, I'd like to add to that to just remind people, or perhaps tell them that if they're not aware, that we've recently changed the way we structure our membership. And in the past, there was a period of associate membership, and that has actually now been removed. So it makes the whole process of joining the SNU very much easier. It can all be done online, and within a matter of a couple of weeks, the administration side is done, your card comes out, and you're a full member of the union. And we welcome you.
Thank you very, very much.
Just to add to that, the SNU, of course, is the parent body and has its subscription. And I think it's £26, beg your pardon, per annum. But the SNUi is a separate membership list, and that will cost you an additional £8 per annum if you're already a member of the SNU. So either way, it's extremely good value for money, as Stephen said earlier. As I always say, it's less than the price of a cup of coffee a week, and much more tasty, I'm sure. Any more questions for our panel? I'm sure that, yes, Kalpana, I hope I've said your name correctly, Kalpana, and I'll just unmute you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Hi,
Yep.
good evening, thank you. My question is, what is the minimum age for SNUi in terms of children? And what kind of safeguarding things have been put into place for them?
Stephen, do you want to pick that one up?
Yes, the minimum age is 18.
18?
So effectively, children can't join.
Right, okay.
But their parents, of course, can join, and then if they want them, they can supervise them, so they're under their own parent supervision if a parent chooses that they want to educate them in spiritualism that way. So we think it's important that parents take the responsibility for their own children's religious education that way. Okay. It's also because there's clearly implications for us if we allow people under 18 to join. How do we know they're being supervised by parents? So the minimum age for membership is 18.
Well, yeah, thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you.
Could I just say that there is an exception to that, because we do have the SNU Lyceum, which is aimed at educating children, Kalpana. Okay. And we do have a safeguarding policy in place for any applications of where children are working together within the SNU Lyceum. It's like the Sunday school, if you like, of spiritualism. So children can be involved in anywhere where there is a lyceum run, which is normally attached to a church.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Thank you.
I thought I saw a hand up from another lady. It's disappeared. Is there another question for the panel? Perhaps whilst you're thinking of that question, I can actually put one myself, because we're actually using technology to a great advantage here today. There's also been a great deal of work done in essence trying to make a technical or electronic communication with the spirit world. Have you any views on this? And do you see it actually taking off, or do you think it might be a great disadvantage to our concept of spiritualism?
Yeah, I can answer that, and I think Judith probably wants to add as well, because Judith and myself have, in fact, done experiments through SNUi and through this media before. Judith in the trance state, I can't remember how many people online, but a considerable number, where as the control was speaking, they're attempting to interact with people's computers in the chat part of it. And they were successfully, people all of a sudden were coming up saying, somebody just put a message in my chat and in my name, I didn't do that, and that was happening. And Jackson, the spirit controller, was saying they were trying to interact and using the event of a trans communication demonstration. In the background, you might say the back office people in the spirit world were attempting to influence electronic equipment. So it is something they're very much interested in. We've had long conversations with certain controls in the spirit who are looking to technology and trying to develop ways, but they need us to be able to help them in the sense of creating a situation where they get access then through the right type of mediums to interact with equipment. We've done experiments at the Arthur College on this on certain weeks. And not only that, but also the subject of spirit photography, which traditionally was on the old photographic equipment, a lot of experiments now trying to influence digital equipment. How can they interact directly with, say, a programming system of a computer? But how do they affect the ones and zeros in a digital camera that can then get an image, a likeness of a deceased person on a digital photograph? This is something I know they're working on because experiments have been done, but I don't know if you want to add to that, Judith.
Just, yes, experiment with it, because our first attempt didn't work. The computer crashed, if you remember, because when I moved into the trance state and the power and the physical energy expanded, so the computer crashed. So we had to rethink that. I had to move further away from the computer. I had microphones on, which I didn't feel was right. It really affected my, and I didn't, not microphone, earphones on, and I didn't like that, so we had to remove those, and I didn't need, what was I hearing? Nothing. So just really experiment with different things and be guided by the spirit world. As far as the information we get from them, they're always willing to give thoughts for future expansion of the communication methods and answer questions. So yeah, experiment with it. It's very exciting. And the effects that were being created were being felt by everyone that was online, weren't they, Stephen, in that experiment we did? Even though they were in all different parts of the world and they didn't know what was actually being directed, but they were all feeling the same effects, because the spirit energy is not restricted in any way by physical miles or anything. It's a non-physical, as in world physical energy, and therefore it can travel anywhere at any time and bring about those wonderful things that we do with absent healing. The fact that Harry Edwards was often, when he was doing absent healing, the recipient, the patient, would see and would tell the nursing staff, the doctor's been to see me. No, it hasn't. Yes, a white-haired man in a white coat was stood at my bedside. So he was actually projecting an image of himself on the power of that healing energy. So so much is possible if we work with it.
Thank you, Judith. Now we have a fresh question. Sandra Park, if you'd like to come through.
Hello.
Yep.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, lovely. Discussion just now about trance. I think you actually answered my question about me asking it. I was wondering with the Education Committee, this is applying to Judith Seaman. Hello, Judith. Will there be any education as regards developing trance mediumship? It's been a few years now since I have been entranced because I've had major heart surgery, but I was before that able with my control guide to do deep trance, and I do mean deep trance, and I would like to, and so would my control guide, resume that again. I was wondering if that was something that you would be considering, but I've just heard that conversation, so I think you've answered me. Am I right?
Well, yes, it's difficult. The development of trance mediumship needs to be done in a practical sense. So there's no, we explain within the education courses what trance mediumship is, and the important word that we need to, in fact, we don't want to call it trance mediumship now, we want to call it control mediumship, which is what it is, because it's allowing the spirit communicator to take control of the medium's mind with the medium's permission, that they're sharing that in order for them to be able to bring forward the communication. And so it's that control element that's really important. Quite a number of people are speaking and maybe misunderstanding that it's a trance control when it's really inspirational speaking. And I think maybe if you could think in terms of taking out the word deep trance and think about closer rather than deeper, because deeper almost indicates that you're in a sleep state, and it's not. It's a very active, powerful state, as I'm sure you are aware.
Yes.
because people seem to think that deep means fast asleep, and of course that is not really what we're looking for. But much trans education takes place at the Arthur Findlay College. There are numerous trans courses at the college for those who want to pursue that possibility within their mediumship.
Okay, thank you very much, Judith. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Judith. Simon Clark. There's a delay in trying to unmute you, Simon. Just bear with me. I think you're clear now. Simon.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm sorry I've been late into the meeting, but I know it's difficult times at the moment. One of the things which I understand to be very important is when we have that love, and when we have that love for others, this is when we can connect closer with spirit and closer to the reality of all what is. But how do we promote that love around the world?
Which of the panel would like to step forward? How
Should
to
I take
promote
that?
Yes, certainly.
Well, I'll begin it. I'm sure somebody else would like to come in on it. Mediumship in itself, Simon, is a faculty, if you will. And it's only by working with the spirit world that we go within and we start to uncover what's within ourselves. We start to develop our own soul, if you will. And then through that soul development, it's that old saying, it's a ripple in the pond. So as we start to develop with the spirit world, we hopefully start to develop our own soul, and then that energy permeates out to others. So it's a little bit to say to you, then you do the right thing for you, and then others will follow on. We can only be as we are. We can't change the world with mediumship in one go. What we can do is change ourselves, and then hopefully it will reflect onto others. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It's like when we find that love within ourselves, it allows that love without to come in. So the subjectivity part and the objectivity part of it, the balance between the two, between the spirit world and our world, it becomes connected, doesn't it? So.
Yeah, well, hopefully it does, because like I missed the first part. I'm sorry, because I didn't get what you said right at the beginning there. But it is that, we learn a faculty, we learn a discipline of mediumship. And then hopefully by feeling that connection with the spirit world and that love of them, from them to us, it changes who we are. It changes how we are as people. As it changes ourselves, then we become that example to others without trying to change anybody else. They just see the way we are, hopefully. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
it's the chicken and egg in a sense. So we do one thing, we learn a discipline, but as we start to connect more deeply with the spirit world, as we start to take that power within us, we start to feel the effect and the love of our own self. And then we start to share that with others. Does anybody else want to add to that? No? Sorry, carry on. I'm not stopping you talking.
Yep. Any more from the panel?
Yeah, if I could just come in.
Thank you, David.
To reinforce what Jackie said, but let's not only look down the line of evidential mediumship, because to me, healing, the philosophy of spiritualism, all of these aspects of our spiritualism will have an aspect on the life that you live and your own spiritual development. And many thousands and millions of people in this world will never stand on a rostrum and give a message. But we can touch their lives, we can touch their soul, and we can bring about a greater realization of their spiritual journey, which perhaps develops an empathy within them for the needs of other people. We need that very much in our world at the moment. So yeah, let's look at the whole panoply of all of the aspects of spiritualism, because I'll challenge anyone here or beyond this meeting. Once you've made that change and made the decision to become a spiritualist, life can never quite be the same again. And why would it be with what we understand? Not belief, not faith, but an understanding based on evidence, on knowledge, on the philosophy of our movement. And to me, that is so important.
Yeah, thank you, David. That was what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're run over time a little bit, so I'm going to draw this session to a close. But I particularly want to thank our speakers tonight, Minister David Bruton, Minister Stephen Upton, Minister Judith Seaman, Minister Jackie Clark, Alv, and of course I also want to thank you for making this particular session possible. We anticipate putting the recording of this session onto the channel so that it will be available for you. But I also draw your attention to the fact that was mentioned earlier. The SNU as a body is a charity. We survive by donations. If you would like to help in the financial aspect of the union, then please make a donation. It's available through our website, and there is in fact a link in the chat at the moment. So from me to you all, have a great evening for most of you, day, and I look forward to seeing many more of you either in the public or in the membership sessions. From me, good morning. Most of you, good night.
Good night.